Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Pod Guide. So today we're going to be looking at, if you have a question, feel free to ask in the comment section. So let me wait a bit for others to join us. So you can take this opportunity to like, share and subscribe. So what is a variable? What is a variable? You can think of a variable as a container. It is a container which can hold data. Okay, let me give some examples. We may have a box. This box can be named name. This box called name can hold things such as maybe stones and also maybe also pins. So what I've said now about the stones and pins, that is what we call data types. And this thing which holds data is a name. So let me rephrase this. What is a variable? What is a variable? They said, I used an analog. It is a container. It is a container which holds data. So this data is what I'm saying, it has different forms. The data which this container can hold, it has different forms. For example, a cup may hold a liquid, but a box cannot hold a liquid. It holds solids. So these variables can hold different types of data. Data types determine the type of data which a variable can hold. Okay. So let us now start to look at what is different types of data types, the things which determine what this variable hold. These are quite easy. The main ones with integers. Integers in brackets int. Integers hold data like whole numbers or positive. That's integers for you. These are whole numbers. And in the event that you've put on integers and there's a processing which has taken place, or the user is entered data which is a decimal, the computer will interpret it as it will like round it off, or it will like truncate. Yeah, I'll tell you the difference. To truncate the data into an integer so that it becomes a whole number. So you have to be careful about when you are using these integers. Use it only in places where you know the data cannot be a float, it cannot be a decimal. Okay, so that's integers. Another example of a data type, we have what we call floats, or just float. Float is like it holds data from decimal numbers. So if it can hold number for decimals, it is also good enough when you can use integers. So float gives you like a versatility. The data can change from an integer to a decimal without a problem, because float can deal with the decimals and also integers. So in terms of processing, floats are highly recommended as compared to integers. Also, you have what we call boolean. A boolean. So a boolean just holds two types of data. It can be true or it can be a false. 1 or 0 in terms of logic gates. So in any circumstance, the data will either be a true or a false. So they are very easy to use. So they may be used in places where you want to apply logic. Yeah, we'll talk about it later when we'll be doing those kind of things which we want to apply logic to our program. And finally, we have what we call strings. Strings hold alphanumeric values. Alphanumeric, I mean, it can hold letters and numbers. Letters or numbers. So I can use something like 13-24 with combined letters and letters and a number. But here's the catch: strings cannot be used in calculations. If you try to do that, to throw you an error, a type error. So strings cannot be used for mathematical calculations. You have to be careful about that. And another important thing, all variables, if you don't specify them in Python, they are treated as strings. So if you forget to inscribe the data type for a variable in Python, it will be treated as a string. So you have to be careful if you want to use that variable in calculations. So sometimes, most of the times, we don't specify if it is a string, because Python will do that automatically. We only do that when we want it to be treated as another data type, like an integer or a float. Okay. So let us have a code. Another important thing in Python we have to be aware of, unlike other programming languages, where you need to first of all define and then assign a variable. Alright, let me say, sorry, define is a combination of assigning and declaring a variable. So in Python we do not declare a variable. So making our work much easier. We don't declare our variables in Python, unlike in other programming languages. So I want to have a variable which can hold data, alphanumerical data, and I want to assign this data to a value called Datenda24. So my variable will be called name. This is the name of my variable. So I want to assign the value of Datenda24. So here, what I've said, name, this is my variable. You can see it's a variable called name. Equal sign, it like assigns. This is my data value. This is the value of my variable. So what I was saying in that analog, name will act as a container to hold this data. This is my container. This is the data, the contents. Yeah. As I have said before, this is an alphanumeric data, and if I do not specify the data type like what I've done here, it will be treated as a string. So I don't need to show it as a string. It will be automatically assigned the data type of a string. And I also want to have a variable which can hold numerical data. Let me call this variable age. Age. I want to assign 12. This is my variable. This is the data. Now, and to show you something here, what I said earlier about calculations and this type of data types, you appreciate these data types when I try to make a mathematical calculation. So let me do a simple one. I want to print age plus 2, and I'll see if it runs. If I have not yet spoken about it, print is a special function in Python. It's like an inbuilt function. Those kind of functions which are already in the programming language to make your work easier. So print is a function which displays what you want on a terminal. So the way it works, it accepts variable, it accepts these parameters inside the brackets. So this is how you call a function. Yeah, you understand this more when we are on the topic of functions. But for now, this is how we output our things in Python. This is how we print on a terminal. So I want to test here this type of data types. Run and debug. Okay. So Python sometimes smart. It assigned a data type for this variable because I assigned it a numerical one, a numerical value. It treated this variable as an integer. But let me try this. Name. I know this one is a string and this one is an integer. Let me try something. Yes. An error. It's called a type error. I'm trying to combine a string and an integer. That's why I have this error. So strings cannot be used for something like mathematical calculations, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and so on. So this is what I wanted to show you about strings. Okay. I also want to show you something. Edge. Let me put on edge. I want to add 2.56 to this edge. The reason it is called a variable is because it can vary its data during processing. It can vary its data during processing. So I want a new variable called new age. Generally maybe 12 plus 2.5. Of course, it doesn't make sense for age, but let me do that. I want to say something, and I want to print a new age. $14.5. So this is what Python is good at. This type of variables. It can assign a data type to a variable. Just like what in another programming language, you have to specify the data type for each variable you want. But in Python, you can assign the data type automatically. So it understands that my new age is a float because I've used this 2.5. So the data type of this variable is a float. Now I want to use it, and so that can give me an error. Let me do something like maybe something like any area of a triangle. Area of a triangle. Something. Area. I want to draw this so that maybe you can appreciate why you need to master the differences between an integer and a float. So area of a triangle, I think it's in half base times height. Okay, so don't want that. I want maybe in area of a area of a circle. I want something with a decimal number. Area of circle should be like pi r squared. So I know the value of pi. I think pi is around 3.15. Yeah, this is what I want. 3.15 times pi r squared. Thing my radius, maybe let me say it's 2, which is 2 squared. So maybe let's just input 4. Because Python is too smart, for the sake of just learning, I want to specifically make this an integer. Sorry. Can do it in the same place. So this is how I specify that the triangle. Oh, I think there's an error. There's going to be an error here. Okay, let me just try it. Okay, let me run this. Okay, it's thrown to meet curve. I highly doubt that is a correct answer. 3.15 times 4, 4.56. Yeah. So if I specify it as an integer and the true value is a decimal, the program will not round normally, like round up if it is above 5 or round down if it is below 5. What you actually do is what we call truncate, to truncate the value. So if you maybe want to know what it is, the simple thing is close to what I've said, just maybe you can say it rounds it down, okay? It rounds down the value. So instead of saying maybe something like 13, that is the actual representation if you round off, it will put on something like 12 because it just round down, not round up, round down always, even if it is above 5 or equal to 5. So what I wanted to show you about confusing floats and integers. But as we go on, I will show you maybe clear examples so that you can actually wrap around what I'm talking about when I about these variables. Yeah, and other things like Boolean, we use it as we go because it needs logic, like using it in something like a loop. So what else can I do? Oh, and if you are not understanding anything, you can say something in the live chat. Okay, so I want to maybe input a simple thing, and if you don't understand it, we're going to tackle some of these things on our next lecture, which is going to be on mathematical calculations. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of variables and data types, I want to show you something on maybe a calculation so that maybe you can appreciate something better. So I want to create a simple program which adds two numbers. So just an addition of two numbers. So I'll say num equals to 1. I want to specify num1 equals to 1. So this is my variable. I've made it an integer variable by virtue of my data. This is a variable by virtue of the data I've entered, not because I've programmed it to be an integer. So you can see num literal. So num1 equals to 1, then num2. If I wanted it to be a string, I could say maybe 1. So this variable is a string because of the type of data I've entered. Although I've entered a number, it's a string because what actually denotes a string in Python are these double quotes. These double quotes indicate that what I've entered is actually a string. So I can enter an alphanumeric thing. Besides a number, I can actually say an n, 1n. Yeah. So a new variable, total. So this is like a hybrid variable. I want add num1 plus num2, and then print total. Are you following this code, guys? So here's my num, it's my variable, which is I've sent a value of 1. This variable is an integer by virtue of the data. This variable is in string. This variable, its data type is string because of the type of data I've entered. Even if I just say 1, even if it's a number, it's a string because of these double quotes. So total is a num1 plus num2. Then I want to print this variable. So this variable is actually combination, then addition of num1 plus num2. This will give an error. Okay, let me just show you the error. An error. Unsupported operand type for plus. So to understand that for addition, we have to have 2 integers at least. You cannot add an integer in the string. An integer in the string. So this one's an integer, this one's a string. By virtue of the data of the kind of data I've entered. So I can just say 1, and start. Now it's 2. Symbol. Now it's 2. And I want to show you how we work with how we can work with strings. Maybe I'll say name equals Alfred, surname equals maybe Moyo. I want to print your name plus surname. This addition sign you see here in this scenario is no longer called an addition sign by virtue of what these two variables hold. As you can see, this variable is a string by virtue of the kind of data it holds, there's double quotes. Also, this variable is a string by virtue of the data it holds. And I have found to print name plus surname. It will do what we call concatenation. Okay. Concatenation. This is basically combining two strings together. It's combining two strings together. That's what we call concatenation. So if I say this string plus this string, to just combine these things together, Alfred Moyo. So let me run it so that you can see. Yeah, Alfred. And if you want to be smarter, one more code. If you want to code be smarter, as you can see, to output something like Alfred Moyo, it has concatenated it, but there's no space. So if you want to correct that, you can do something like having an empty space here. I've combined this string plus this empty space plus this string. So let me run it. Alfred Moyo. So this is how we can manipulate strings. There are many ways you can manipulate strings, but these are peripheral issues you can do. What else? Integers, float, strings. Okay, but what if I actually want to combine a string and an integer? Let's say you want to maybe narrate, like, let me show you. Age took off. I want this to be outputted in one go. I want to combine this string and this integer. What do? This is where what I've said becomes powerful. So I want to name, oh sorry, 12 is actually the age of Alfred. 12. As you know, this will throw an error, so I'm gonna let to see the error. That's the same error I've talked about over and over again. Yeah, this type of error. But I actually want to combine these things. So what I will do, I have to convert what is convertible so that it can have the same type of data types. If I want to combine these things and bring them together, these two variables have to have the same data type. If it was possible, I would make this variable the same with this one, but in this context, I'll have to change age so that it appears as a string. I'll convert it a little bit so that it will be a string. So to do that, use something like str age. So this code str converts this variable to a string, so that at the end of the day, I'll combine this variable, which is a string, plus another string using this plus sign, which is what we call concatenation. Yeah, Alfred 12. This is now outputting Alfred 12 because now these two variables have the same data types. Okay, this is for strings, but what if I say maybe, okay, let me say age. Okay, let me say maybe current year. Current year equals to 2026. In your age, sorry, age, yeah, let me make this a string. Your age is maybe 22. Then another variable, you can have many variables you want. Maybe another variable, let me say it's your birth year. So to get a birth year, what do we do here? We say 2026 minus your age, your current year minus your age. That's how we get a birth year. So it will be current year minus age. Then print birth year. Okay, let me run this one. Yeah, an error. Birth year equal to current year minus age. So this is where the error is. What I'm doing is what we call debugging, looking for an error so that we can solve it. So what is the kind of error? It's an integer and string. So this operand minus doesn't work for integers and strings. So what do I need to do? I have to convert this age to an integer. But isn't this integer, is this variable an integer? It is not, because of the kind of data I've entered, the kind of way how I've entered this type of data. I have put on double quotes, making it a string. So it's a string, this one, not an integer. I have to convert it to an integer. How? I come here and say int age. Int, then I open a bracket, I put on my variable and close the bracket. So what will we do? It will convert this variable to an integer. So let me run it again. Now 2004. So it's now working correctly. 2004 here. This is where this type of data types come into play, because for declaring and for definition, for defining the variables per se, Python do it automatically. If I just say 22 here, normally like an integer, there will be no need for all of this, because Python automatically will assign 22 here because of the kind of data I've entered. 0 Okay, so what do I do if I need for floats? Okay, for float, I'll say maybe pi equals to 3.14. Radius equals to 2. In area, this area is an area of a circle. It's pi times radius squared. Okay, because I've not yet done mathematical calculation with you, I'll spare you this one and just do it in my head. So I want to say area equals to pi r squared, which radius squared is just 4, huh? 2 times 2, just 4. So I want to print area. Okay. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. 12 times 12.56. Do is done it correctly. Pi is a float. It has done this automatically because of the type of data I've entered. If I put a comma in a number, it would detect that this one is a float, it's a decimal. So that's why the variable here, my variable pi, is a float. It has done this automatically. Radius will be just an integer. Area will be a float. Why? Because it's a combination of a float and an integer. A float times an integer will give us a float. So that's the logic here. Print area. Okay. Maybe. Okay, let me look for something else so that you can grasp something here. Okay, num1 equals to 2. num3 equals to 3. And you say num2 product with num1 times num2. Then I print out the display. So I've covered a lot of ground here. So this is the order. This is the order of a program. Input, this is your input here. Input, process, and then your output. This is what we call IPO. IPO, input, processing, output. This is generally the order of a program. Back to our thing. Let me try to run it. 2 times 3. Yeah. 33. So it will be very funny. Okay, I'll have to take you back also to strings after this thing so that you can understand why it is outputted, it is printed out 33. There's a specific reason why it has done this. But for now, just know that this is wrong. Of course, 2 times 3 equals to 6, not 33. So why is it wrong? Because of the wrong data. But why didn't it throw an error to me? That's something else I will talk about after this scenario. So how do I correct it? Okay, this is my integer. This is a string. Let me say 3.33. Okay, more weird, but okay. So I have to convert num here, num2, to what is called a float. Yeah. So I'm now converting. So this one num2 is a string by virtue of how I have entered it into the system. If I have entered it correctly like this, Python will treat it as normal, like 3.33 as a float. This will be a float automatically. But because of the way I've entered it, it's now a string. Yeah, I just wanted to show you to convert it back to strings. I want to show you how to convert it back to a float. But you encounter places where you have to convert a variable to another data type. We'll get to those scenarios, but here I just wanted you to appreciate data types. So this is why I'm doing these things. Float num2. So num2 is being converted to a float for this scenario only, So to be when you run it, yeah, it's now normal 6.66 because it's now normal here. It's now a float. So what I've done here, it's like transient. That's why variables are very versatile. This change is transient. That's why if I want to do something like print num2 after this product process, if I want to print num2 to see its value, it will be 3.33 has been converted. Okay, let me try to print it here. .33. Okay. Let me say type. But still on data types. Let me do this. Yeah. Class str. What does this type num2 mean? Okay. When I say type num2, I'm just basically asking the program, what data type does this variable have? That is what this code means. Type, then I put on bracket num2. It's like an inquiry of the data type this variable has. So I say tab num2. That's why it is class string. So it's a string here. So isn't it the same? Isn't just like simple repetition here and here. It's different. Programming is like climbing a rope. There's need for flow. There's a flow of data. So if what happens here goes down, never in reverse, what I do here doesn't affect what happens here. What happens here affects what goes on here. There's a down movement of data, flow of information or of data. Okay, so for here, back to our classes. Here num2 goes to 3.33, but with this in double quotes. So it's a string by virtue of these double quotes. That's why this class str. But here, product equals num1 times float. I transiently converted here. Transient conversion. A transient converted this is string to a float. The transient change. That's why when I come back here to print num2, it is still a string because this change is a transient change. Okay, think you get it. Any questions? Okay. No questions. So, what else can we check with you? Okay, data types, variables. Okay. I think most of these things we'll be using it, and we'll also be revising some of these things when we are on mathematical calculations. Yeah. So, if you have any question, just put it in the comment section. I'll reply to